So, I'm returning to the world of Super Mario, and last time I was there, I looked at the series' first departure from 2D to 3D, and the time before that being the original game. I know I'm jumping around a bit since I went from 1985 to 1996 and now back to 1988, but for this series of reviews, I'm going to be focusing on Mario 2, Mario The Lost Levels, and finally Mario 3. That's mostly why I'm hesitant to be calling this a marathon since it's only 3 games, but I don't want to focus on Mario for too long, because now that Sonic Mania has been delayed, I'm going to do another marathon while in anticipation for that game. I won't reveal it now, but I'll say it isn't really a series I've talked about before, but one that I'm very interested in looking into. But enough of that. This video is about Mario 2, and I guess I'll talk about my history of this game. It was released in 1988 for the NES. But my only experience with this game is from the Masterpiece section of Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which, might I add, I hated the Masterpiece section since they only give you like a minute or so to play the game. It was basically advertising for the Virtual Console. So, since it had a very strict time limit, I couldn't really get an opinion on it until now, but first I'll talk about something I'm sure 99% of you already know about. Like I said, most of you already know that this game was originally released in Japan in 1987, but it was known as Doki Doki Panic. Japan had their own version of Super Mario 2, which was released in 1986, but they never sent it over to the US and Europe until years later, where it was entitled Mario 2 The Lost Levels. The reason they never sent it over was it was too hard. Well, that's an understatement. I haven't played it yet, but I've got my work cut out for me for the next review from what I've heard. When they moved Doki Doki Panic to the US and Europe, they changed all the characters to be Mario themed, and I'm pretty sure all the enemies stayed the same. Which is weird, since so many of Mario's most iconic enemies didn't even originate from a Mario game, they originated from this game. So let's get into the story, which isn't that different from a regular Mario plot. There's a world called Subcom, which is being terrorized by this frog thing called Wart, who's pretty much just Bowser without it actually being Bowser. Mario, along with Luigi, Peach, and a blue toad of all things, get transported to Subcom to defeat Wart and rescue its residents. The story's fine except for one thing at the very end, which I won't mention right now. So the game lets you pick from any of the 4 characters from the very beginning, who each have their own unique abilities. Mario's the all-rounder, not too good or bad at anything. Luigi, who can jump the highest but is very slippery, which doesn't really get in the way as much as it sounds it does. Peach, who can float for a couple of seconds but is extremely slow, especially when digging. And finally, Blue Toad, who is the fastest but can't jump as high as the other characters. Every character except for Mario comes in handy for specific. There we go. Fuck's sake. Comes in handy for specific stages, and it can change how difficult the game is for you overall. I'm not one to play as a different character for every level. I just usually find my favourite one and stick as them for the rest of the game, and from the footage you've seen throughout the video you can probably take the guess that I've played as a Luigi for nearly the entire game. Like I said, his butterfeet don't really get in the way as much as you think they would, and his higher jump is very useful when it comes to a lot of the stages in this game. Mostly since, while the original Mario Bros. Focuses on horizontal platforming and very rarely does go vertically, this game does the opposite, as most of the game is vertical and not that much is horizontal. This is just my personal preference, but I'm not a big fan of vertical level design, as I'm always stressed to not fall off or I'll be sent to the bottom, but in this game it isn't that big a problem for 2 reasons. When the game goes vertically, it knows when it's getting too high for the most part, and 2, when you reach a new vertical screen the game freezes so that the screen can catch up to the player, giving you a second or 2 to react where the ground is beneath you. The game consists of 7 worlds, each containing 3 levels, except for the 7th world which only contains 2 levels. The levels don't take too long, and the end is usually when you fight a birdo and get taken away in the mouth of this bird. At the end of a level, you're taken to these slot machines to win extra lives, which you really don't need since Mario now has a health meter, which you can extend by collecting mushrooms. You can get mushrooms by entering these doors, which you find by pulling up a potion from the ground. The reward all depends on where you place it though, so be careful where you place it. Unlike a normal Mario game, you can't jump on enemies to kill them. You either have to throw another enemy at them, or something else that the character can dig up from underground, which are usually vegetables, which is a bit weird. Does it explain in the manual why it's vegetables? I mean, the final boss has a machine that shoots out the vegetables, which for some reason is his weakness. Speaking of bosses, this game actually has a variety of them, which I like much more than Mario 1's method of being just a Bowser fight over and over and over again. This game has original fights with bosses like Moister, Triclide, and the Ball of Fire. The game doesn't really get that hard except for the last level where I think the challenge is just placing these sparks everywhere, but still the game doesn't have many bad levels. It also doesn't have many good levels, or at least no levels that I can remember off the top of my head. A lot of it is just reused assets from the first couple worlds. It shouldn't take you all that long to beat. Before you know it, you'll be fighting Wart in no time, and a very disappointing final boss as you beat it the same way you beat every other boss and enemy in the game. Just grab something and throw it at him. After that, Wart is defeated, and everyone cheers for our heroes, even Mario, who literally did nothing the entire adventure. Then we find out the entire game was just a dream that Mario had one night. Isn't that great? Everything I did was meaningless. It's like the end of Wave Ocean in Sonic 06 where you find out the whole level was pointless. Except to have that be the whole game. Which actually wasn't the same game. Well, shit. In the end, I don't mind this game. It's not really a game that I would ever go back to unless it was for a Let's Play or something along those lines. You know, I've said it before and you're going to hear it for the next couple of reviews. Mario games bore me. It's not that the games aren't good, it's just that I can't play them for too long before just doing something else. I more prefer a game that I can just pick up and play for a minute then sit down, or have a game that I can play for hours and not get bored like Breath of the Wild. So next time we meet, I'll be covering the real Mario 2. See you later.